Hey everybody, it's Tanya Smith here, and this is Stream Like a Boss TV. And I am super excited because this is a guest show. So I have a guest expert that's going to be on with me, somebody that I've known for a long time, who I hold near and dear to my heart, one of my former mentors, who I hold him in high esteem, and his name is Bob Sparkin. So I'm going to introduce him to you in just a couple of seconds. What I definitely want to make sure you do is, because at this show, we consider you family if you've watched before. If you're new to the space and you haven't seen Stream Like a Boss TV before, I want you to go ahead and type in hashtag a newbie so that we can acknowledge you and recognize you. And if you have been here even once, you're now family, so it's official. You get to type in hashtag OG. So I know that I love to have my OGs and my newbies both in the audience. We are pre-recording this, so this is not a live stream, but what I want to share with you is that you have the opportunity to ask questions, and if there's anything I can relay back to Bob after the show, I will make sure to do that so that he can, of course, acknowledge and respond to you as well. Okay, folks, so at Stream Like a Boss TV, what we focus on is the idea of leveraging digital marketing strategies, especially live streaming and video, to really promote yourself so that you stand out online, serve more people, and sell more of your services. And one of the things that tends to happen whenever we're doing those things is sometimes it gets to be a little overcomplicated. We're doing so much that it's hard to prioritize what to do next. So Bob is going to help us with a method that he has coined, Take Action, Revise Later. But let's hear directly from him. Bob,
Hey,
welcome
Daniel.
to the show. What's up, sir?
Thank you so much, Daniel. Oh, I love the applause. Thank you. We have known each
Yes.
other like almost as long as we've both been in business, like 20 years. So holy cow, it's great to be on with you for a live stream, even though this isn't live on your show. Thanks for making an accommodation because, like you, I have kids, but mine are 6 and 8. So it's a little difficult to come on a
Yes.
Thursday night. So thanks so much for pre-recording this with me.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. We definitely had to make the time for this because, yeah, family is definitely priority. And speaking of priorities, I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but tell me a little bit, let our audience know a little bit about you. And we've known each other for a long time, but you've done a lot of things. So, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and especially sharing about what you're a specialist at right now or what you really focus on now, that would be great. And then we can dive into that topic of prioritizing.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for having me. And one of the things I have always been since the moment I can think about wanting to do anything is be a teacher. Whether it was in third grade, trying to get my classmates to understand what the teacher was saying, serving as a substitute for my calculus teacher in 12th grade when she went on conferences. I always wanted to be a teacher, and I did so. Out of college at Florida State, I went into the classroom, 10 years history classroom, world religions, world history, etc. So you can imagine my brain right now during this season of politics has been just off the rails. But I did that. And then at some point, like many teachers do, I did want to find ways to make some extra money as well as avoid some burnout. And so I started to get into online marketing. And what I realized was whatever I was doing, I kept falling back to explaining things to people who were confused about online strategies. And eventually that led me to create a lot of courses, workshops, conferences, mastermind programs, coaching programs, etc. And eventually that turned into a role as an entrepreneur at Lead Pages, which was about a decade. I served that audience,
Yeah.
helping them understand how to market online, conversion marketing, list building, but all kinds of aspects of coaching. And now, of course, I'm coaching again independently and helping people understand what are their priorities, what are their marketing challenges and opportunities, and make decisions to take action and revise later, to get away from the things that can hold them back and to make sure they can impact more people with less effort. So that's what I'm up to doing now.
I love it. I love it. And I know that there have been a lot of like life changes too, because you mentioned you have a 6 and an 8-year-old, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yep. I'm married to an amazing executive coach who's a
Yeah.
brilliant woman in her own right. Great mom, of course, too. And She and I have raised two amazing kids who are in Spanish immersion. We love to travel. We love to, do all the things involved in the PTO, and whatever I can do to save time as I'm trying to execute my own marketing strategies, I want to take on. But I also want to relay what I learn from both, my years of experience in a company that we can learn as an independent solopreneur too.
And speaking of that, so that's going to bring me to one of my first questions. And right now, people are so overwhelmed and inundated with just tasks, like things that they have to do. So you juggle family, you juggle maybe other situations, friends, right? Maybe you have a corporate job like I do, and you're doing that along with your side hustle, business, which is almost darn near full time too. All the things. But people who are creating digital content and doing any type of digital marketing, even if you're not considering yourself to be a digital marketer, you still are having to put content out online so that people can see you and find you when they look you up. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges for people who are on digital these days?
Mm-hmm. I think it's making decisions and making them confidently, sticking to them long enough for them to bear fruit, right? So I don't know about you, Tanya, but I know a lot of people that I've seen over the last 20 years, they have way too many ideas, and each idea has way too many things to do within them to get them to bear fruit, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a number of factors then at play. You have your time factor, right? Of parenting, work, hobbies, friends, all those things you mentioned. But you also have income needs. Like, you got to pay the bills, and you got to invest, and you got to save for college, and you got to do all these things.
Yeah.
All those require prioritization, right? And then you want to put projects out into the world that are going to bear fruit as a revenue or an audience builder or whatever it may be. And sometimes we don't have the luxury of doing all the things at the same time because
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible, right? And so what I like to share with people is, how can you make some decisions that allow you to come up with your list of things you want to do, break it down with some key kind of ratio factors that we'll talk about here in a minute. Some it's kind of those rubric things we would do back in the day in the classroom, and then give yourself a list of 3 things instead of 300 things, but
Mm.
still have the knowledge that when you're ready for the next things on your list, you know where they are and you know how to start to tackle them. But this idea of overwhelm is so debilitating, it's so
Yeah.
crippling. And for people that have 10 hours a week to do their business, especially, but even if you're up to 40 or whatever, you still have limited resources and limited time. And even if you delegate out to 50 different freelancers, you still need to prioritize
Yes.
what's going to be the thing that's going to have the best ROI and finish and be able to finish it so that you can see the rewards from it.
What do you think is one of the first steps that someone should take when it comes to get, first of all, the recognition that, hey, I'm
Mm,
overwhelmed and there's no way I'm going to do 150 things? Because I think
yeah.
sometimes we fool ourselves. I know I do. Like, I'm just going to make this list and I'm going to tackle all of them, and all of them will get done in 24 hours. Never happens.
Never
What
happens.
is the
Even
first?
you don't even have time to journal the fact that you don't have time to do all the things, which would give you the awareness that it
Yes.
is a problem. So first of all, just admit you have a problem. Even if you don't think you have a problem, just assume you do for a moment. Just play a thought experiment. Even if you think everything's perfect and hunky-dory, assume for a minute you have a productivity problem. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
take that step back and then start to think, like, what am I doing? What am I trying to do? What impact do I want to have? And am I having that impact? And you'll probably realize pretty quickly that you're not having the impact that you want. You're not making the money that you want. You're not spending the time with your family that you want. You're not, all these things may be true for you. Maybe some of them, maybe all of them. That's up to you to decide. But taking that step back, just put into your calendar 30 minutes, 15 minutes if you don't have 30. Do it in, take time in the shower, whatever. Just make a time carved out where you can say to yourself, I'm going to ask myself the question, how am I doing with what I'm trying to do? And just be honest with yourself. Like, nobody on social is going to see it. You're not trying to like fake it till you make it or anything like that. It's just you being real with yourself. What am I trying to do? How am I doing with doing it? And you'll probably realize, like myself, I imagine you do this yourself, Tanya, that you can't do everything. And
Yeah.
whatever you're trying to do, if you start to expand too much, you're letting balls drop. You're trying to spin too many plates, they're crashing down. Three or four of them might be wobbling, but still, teetering at the top of the pole, but a lot of them are crashing. And that's not a way for you to be excited about your business. It's stressful, right? It brings poor clients in the door. The clients you
Yeah.
have or the customers you serve don't get the full you. And
Hmm.
so they don't get the results that lead to more testimonials and case studies. So I want you to understand this is holistically a big challenge that has to be addressed and tackled. And it's not going to be perfect, but man, it can be so much better than what you're currently going through.
So how do you, once you've made this move to be more aware, how do you then take the steps to eliminate certain things and then hold on to those other ideas that need to get done? Like, how do you decide and determine where you need to spend that time?
Yeah. So in a moment, I want to show you like a geeky spreadsheet that
Ha.
helps me. And I know some of you are going to be like, I can't stand spreadsheets, but I want you to, take a step back for a moment and I'll show it to you in a moment. But the first thing that you need to do to tackle this is to do an inventory of all the things. And that can be both business and personal. Like if you're involved in volunteering at your kid's school, like me, if you're involved in, trying to connect with trivia contests, I'm wearing this shirt. This is one of the biggest trivia contests in the planet online called Learned League. Like there's things that you want to do and all of them take time. But for your business projects, if you have, entrepreneurial ADHD, you might not have a real psychiatric diagnosis of ADHD, but if you have this idea of like way too many things, having a list, having an inventory of all the things you're trying to do that you think about that keep rattling around in your head of things that you could do or should do, having a list of that is super helpful. Just having that list. So you can say to yourself, man, I am overwhelmed. I am trying to do a lot. And your brain can start to realize that I can handle this if I can reorganize it, if I can prioritize it. If you don't do that, if you don't have a visual idea of all the things, you just keep thinking about them.
Hmm.
And even after you prioritize the list, you might still be thinking about them, but you're going to give your brain permission to turn them off because they're nice and safe and tidy in this lovely little organized list. And once you have that list, then we can start to play with, well, which ones are actually the most important? Which ones will get the impact I want to have? Which ones will be things I can deliver at a pace that I can see a reward from? Because what happens, Tanya, when you try to do 7 things at the same time? None of
None
them
of them
get
get
done,
done.
right? Maybe you get 10% done one day of this one, then you move to the next one, you move to the next one, you move to the
Yep,
next one. It takes you a year and a half to finish one thing when
that's
you could
right.
take 2 weeks to do one thing if you could focus on it. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to help you to focus on just the one thing that you can do at a time. Now, I came about this, because I worked for a company that used agile methodology in its software, right? I don't know if you've heard that before. I'm sure you have, Danny, because of
Yeah.
where you work. But agile is simply this process of like having an approach, a very, I guess mechanical is probably a way to put it, of prioritizing backlog, things to do, all that kind of stuff. And most entrepreneurs have never learned that kind of a methodology. And it's not perfect for entrepreneurs, but you can learn a lot from it. So the idea is that you're going to take these things, stack them in an order of sequence of what you're going to do. So you give yourself permission to focus on the one thing at a time. And the trick is, are you confident enough in that thing that you do first? So what I've found people to do is they do something like this. They maybe do it on their own and they don't have a coach to help them see like really behind what they're saying. Is it really true to them?
Hmm.
Right? Like, this, you talk to people all the time.
Yeah.
You can hear in their body language or the way that their tonality is, they're not really into that thing that they think is the best thing for them to do. But a
Hmm.
coach can say, tell me more about why you want this one. And because when I hear you talk about this thing over here that you have fifth on your list, you get really excited about it, but it's like way down. Well,
Yeah.
the excited thing way down is going to keep percolating to the top through your brain, And the first thing that you thought you wanted to do is going to keep having that interference, right? It's like those old TVs with the antenna that you had to, rabbit ear. You're going to have blurriness in the project that you're trying to do. So what I'm saying is that if you do this the right way for yourself, I mean, it's going to be an adjustment for you. You get the list that you can be confident in, and then move from one thing to the next.
Okay. So I want to apply this to like the world that I play in when it comes to content creation, which is a big deal for people who are doing digital marketing and specifically like with video. So there are a lot of folks who are in my audience that want to do more with video. So whether they're doing live streaming or they're producing videos on demand or they're using video to create a podcast that is in both worlds, audio and video. What
Yeah.
is your take on a couple of ideas, just a few, because I know you have a whole system, like you
Yeah.
have a whole thing that you could, but just a couple of tips that
Yeah.
might be helpful to help cut down on the feeling of chaos and overwhelm when it comes to content creation.
Yeah. One thing is to talk about it with somebody, whether it's a coach or a colleague you trust or a peer, not necessarily the people in your family. The people in your family may get it and they may be able to understand that you have, certain things that you want to do. But when you're talking to a peer or a coach who's understanding like what the ramifications or consequences can be, both positive and negative or whatever you choose, you get a little different flavor. And even just hearing yourself talk it out usually can provide a bit more momentum towards it. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is be realistic. Like you mentioned this earlier, Tanya, of being realistic with your time, but also be realistic about, will you actually hit it out of the park with this one thing? Like somebody can teach you or tell you, you got to do a podcast. And the podcast is going to be what brings you millions of listeners and lots of money. But podcasts take a long time if you're
Yeah.
not also networking with a group of people who can introduce you to their audience, right? There's other things that can help your podcast grow. But if you all of a sudden you just get a mic, you go to Amazon, you get the kit, you do all the things, you start recording and you put it on Libsyn or Spotify or whatever, who's going to listen? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I love this line in your bio of turning crickets into cash and clients. Like, who's there? Right. So
Yeah.
understanding that a podcast may be absolutely the best thing for you to do, but there's other things that have to be a part of it. Same thing with writing a book or doing a YouTube channel or creating a course. Like all these things can be amazing, but
Mm-hmm.
which one is the right one for you to actually do? And which one will you actually commit to and complete in a timely fashion? Those are the kinds of things that are important for you to be considering so that you can say, you know what, I want to do a podcast, but first I'm going to do this thing. And then I'm going to do this thing. Then the podcast will be third thing on the list.
So it
While I'm
sounds
doing
like
that,
you're
all of it
saying
leads to each other.
Sounds like you're saying you got to do a lot more self-reflection instead of listening to what everybody else says you're supposed to do and you need
Yeah,
to do this, that you actually have to dig a little deeper and find out what you authentically are connected to. That's what I
exactly.
think I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you don't do that, then you're just doing things because people told you to do them.
Yeah.
And if you listen to other people's voices and not your own, then you're just not going to have the internal motivation to actually get it done. Now, it is
Yeah.
true, I think, to have accountability and maybe a little bit of some cajoling is probably not the right word, but help from outside forces to push you, to guide you, right? But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, that self-reflection is really key because you have to buy into it. Especially if you're on camera a lot, how you present yourself on camera is a direct reflection of your own confidence in what you're doing. And if you're not super confident because you haven't figured out what you really want to do and you're just doing stuff because people said to do it, you're going to come across super flat.
Yeah.
And that's not going to attract any business for you, especially on camera.
Really, really great advice. I love it. Now, you mentioned something about a worksheet. All right, Bob. So, what do we have up on screen here? What is this?
Yeah, so this is what I like to call the project priority ICE framework. Now, I didn't invent the ICE framework. A gentleman named Sean Ellis over at Growth Hackers did so a while back. I have my own take on it. So I want to present it to you. Again, this is something that companies like the one I was part of use as a way to prioritize software builds or marketing tasks or whatever. I love to use it as part of an entrepreneurial business prioritization method. So it's very simple, actually. So I know some of you watching might not love spreadsheets, but I think you're going to dig using Google Sheets as a tool. If you don't use Google Sheets, your alternative is to use things like Asana or Trello or any of these other things that you wind up paying money for at some point. And this is just, a free tool I love to use because it's part of Google Sheets. So you come up with your list of projects. Okay. So I'm just going to list them as project one, and we'll just fill the list here. Of all of the projects you could do. You would normally, name these whatever the projects are, right? You would describe them with a little bit so that you help yourself think through, like, what's this project really about? The magic of this framework, though, is in the I, C, and E. So I in the original stands for impact, but it can also stand for income. So which one of these is going to have the biggest impact on your business or generate the most revenue? What's the payoff, basically? And you give yourself a score of 1 to 10 on this particular project. So in a moment, Tanya, I'm going to ask you for like 3 projects that you currently are thinking about doing for yourself, and I'll
Okay.
put them in to get a real world example of this. The C is for the confidence that you have in this project doing well. I also like to think about it as the commitment. How committed are you to doing this project because you think it's going to work out well, as opposed to those projects that might be pie in the sky and you're like, I'm not really sure it actually would work. If it did work, awesome, it's going to be amazing, but I don't really know for sure that that's going to work out for me. That's what the C's for. And then the E in its original form is effort. Some people use E's. I like to use effort and endurance. Which ones are you going to be able to dedicate your time to? And how much effort is it going to actually take? That's both in your focus each, week to week, but also maybe how many days or weeks or even months will it take for you to get the job done for this project to be out into the world. Then what you'll do is you'll make this into a little math formula. I've already set up the formula for us, so you don't have to worry about what it is. And in the original ICE framework, you multiply these things together. I like to multiply the I and C together and divide by the effort. So you get a score that's going to be able to be relative to each other. Now, the reality is that all of this is subjective to you as an individual. You might work with me or somebody else as a coach who can help you think through the different levels, but you can certainly do this on your own. And what matters to you is that you're realistic about the
Mm-hmm.
values you give for each particular project. And then once you have that, we'll do some stuff to it. Okay. So give me 3 projects you're thinking about doing, Tanya, that you have on your mind that you're not quite sure which one you should do first.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I have already actually just recently done these, but they're fresh on my
Yep.
mind. One is to revise my entire website. So I was making a move from one platform to another.
Yep.
So that's
Perfect.
one. Uh,
Second.
the second one would be creating a new sales funnel.
Okay.
The third would be launching a Roku channel.
Awesome. So all 3 of those, and I'm sure you could give me another list of 10, right? But just for
Mm-hmm.
sake of our time, we'll leave it at that. Imagine that all 3 of these could be amazing for your business, right? All of them make sense. You could talk to somebody on the street, and somebody in a conference, and you're like, I'm thinking about starting a Roku channel. They're like, you should absolutely do that. And you go to the next person, like, that's a waste of time.
Yep.
All these things, you'll have that kind of back and forth. So what this does is it gives you the opportunity to be somewhat subjective, but put it in a mathematical fashion to gut
Okay.
check what's true for you. So impact of a new website for you, 1 to 10, what would you give that?
Oh my goodness. It's done now, but if it weren't done, if all these 3 things were not done yet, I'd probably say maybe like a 5 or 6,
Okay,
realistically.
perfect. And how confident are you that you would have that kind of a result?
And that's 1 to 10 too. So
Yep.
I'm confident, maybe about a 7,
Okay. And then how much effort does it take to put a website together and redo all the things you were doing?
like a 10,
Yeah,
10
super
plus.
high, right? So that score is a 4.2.
Okay.
4.2 what? Like, who cares? You don't know until you get the relative score of the rest of them, right? So new sales funnel, impact of that.
Um, the impact could be great. So that's like, I give that like a 9.
Perfect. And how confident are you in that?
I am probably about an 8 or a 9 on that too.
Okay. And then how much effort does it take to put together a completely new sales funnel?
It's still a 10.
Yeah,
All of my
exactly.
stuff is a 10. Everything
Awesome.
is a 10. Okay.
Launching a Roku channel. Impact.
Um, Impact, probably a 4,
Okay. And confidence in that.
maybe 5 or 6,
Okay. And then the effort to do that.
about a 7 or 8.
Okay. So you do that for all of these, right? So I'm just going to fill in some numbers just for fun so that we have something to compare. And you can obviously see what populates, right? And doesn't matter to me which ones are what. I'm going to change this so that we only have like a single decimal, so it's not all confusing
Look at that.
looking. Right. And then what you wind up doing is you get this list and then you simply sort it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Z to A, because you want the highest score to be at the top. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, this is not sorting for me. Hang on just a second. Let's try that one more time. What the heck?
Uh-oh.
All right. We're going to get rid of these guys for now. Okay. So we'll just do these projects.
Okay.
All right. So I'm clearing out the projects that we don't have listed yet, but we now have our projects ordered. We sorted from Z to A. So if you were to have done this from scratch, the sales funnel would be the highest score. Okay. So in this particular way that I've made the math, the highest score is the winner, but you're ultimately the one that makes the decision. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
normally what you would do is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But you can do a gut check and say, but you know what? As I look at these, what I really think I want to focus on is I want to do, this website. It's been bugging me for too long. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be doing that one first. And then that becomes your priority list.
I
Okay.
like it.
Now, then you can come up with a target date of when you think this will get done, right? So, a website takes a few weeks at least for most people, start to finish. So you
Mm-hmm.
might just say, it's going to be on 11/25/2024, whatever. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then new sales funnel, let's get it to be January the 5th, 2025. And then for some reason, I love to have my stuff on the wrong. I spent time in Spain and I still haven't fixed
I
my
was going to say that's a different
like
country. Yep.
yeah. The next project, let's say it's going to be February 1, 25, and project 4, let's call it March 1. We can always revise these later, right? But we're just giving ourselves time
Mm-hmm.
to bucket when could stuff get done.
Yeah.
Okay. Roku channel we'll do is April 1st. And then we'll have project 6, we'd have May 1st. You can obviously adjust these as you would want to. Now, once you have that in mind, then what I want you to do is there's another key factor that makes this really cool. Again, imagine that your list is going to be like 40 projects long, which really makes a big difference. When it's only 6, it's not that big a deal. Like this isn't super overwhelming to me. But when the
Mm-hmm.
list is like 40 long, as most of you will have when you actually go through this exercise, this next step is really the key. This is the magic. And this is not something that I saw taught by anybody else. So over here, I have a status column. Now, the normal status column for an agile framework like ICE is now, next, or later. But I don't find that to be super helpful to segment out the things that are actually in the future. I am a big baseball fan. You might see my little Orioles and Twins bobblehead things back here. So I like to think of things in baseball terms. So what is number 1 is going to be at bat. This is what's happening right now. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is going to be on deck. The third thing is going to be in the hole. The next thing is going to be in the bench. And anything else after that is going to be like in the farm system. Like it's not even something that's visible to me. That's down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then what you can do if you turn on the filter with Google Sheets. So if you didn't already do this, you would have highlighted this section and then turn on this little filter icon. And you can say, I only want to see the things that are at bat and on deck. And you click OK. And those are the only 2 things that are even remotely on your mind. If you even want to get rid of on deck for now, you can say, I don't even want to see on deck. And you
Mm-hmm.
just uncheck that box and say, okay. So now when you're looking at this sheet of all the things to do, this is the only thing that you're worried about. But your brain knows that all the rest of your projects are still in this sheet. And when you're ready to move to the next one, you can say, this one is complete. This one is now at bat. This one is next on deck, etc. And then you can go back to looking at just the things that are at bat for you to focus on.
I like
This
it.
is really simple. So you don't have to do any VLOOKUP formulas or do any pivot tables or anything like that for what people usually get scared about spreadsheets about. You use this as a super easy visual tool to help you rank things, prioritize them, and then give yourself a timeline of when they get done and give yourself a status check for it.
That is very cool, Bob. Gosh, wow. Okay. So I told you he had systems. That is super cool. I'm definitely going to implement, I'm going to try to see if I can put something together. I actually use Smart Suite these days,
Mhm.
and I bet I could probably create something just like that in the system. But do you have, let me ask you this because
Yeah.
we're getting ready to wrap. What is the best way for people to work with you? Because you mentioned several times, which I agree with, sometimes it's good to partner with someone for accountability and also to be able to see beyond what you can see right in front of you. So, how do you help people with taking action and revising later?
Yeah. So what I'd love to do is this template with all its formulas and such it's already been built. I'd love to just give it to you if you head over to takeactionreviselater.com/ice. So takeactionreviselater.com. I'll actually, for the sake of our call, we'll do it from the homepage as well. But eventually it'll be takeactionreviselater.com/ice. I will have this template for you to download. You can start using it right away, right? But I would love to work with you through the process of making your choices. So either going through it together or after you've done it, helping you think through it. I'd love to have you consider taking a little bit of a coaching call with me, and you'll get the details of that after you've signed up for the template. But basically, we sit down together for an hour or so, go through your priorities, make sure the things are in the right place, and we just make sure you're feeling confident about where you're trying to go. If you want to continue working with me for accountability to execute these strategies, I obviously can do that too. But let's start out with just that single session and make sure that it's the right fit for you.
I love it, Bob. This has been so helpful. And I hope people will take advantage of that because I do feel that there is value in working with someone like you who can really not only talk about, hey, here's what you need to do, but you actually have solid methodology behind it. So even just what you shared a few minutes ago, I'm thinking, ooh, there's some things I need to plug into that sheet. Like I would have
Yeah.
about 40 or 50 things in reality on that
Yep.
list. So
And
that
the
was
truth
awesome.
is, business and personal, right? So if you
Yeah.
have a list of things you're trying to do for your family, you do the same thing. Like I think most people honestly don't consider their family in the same
Yeah.
kind of prioritization, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like who's the loudest squeaky wheel
Mm-hmm.
gets it done. But if you sit down, even as a family, and say, "Hey, look, here's the 10 things we want to do," or we've got 10 vacation ideas we want to do. Let's do the same kind of thinking process through this and have input from the different stakeholders, i.e., kids, spouse, whatever,
The
and
real
get it done.
stakeholders.
Right. The real stakeholders.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for walking us through that, for talking a little bit about your methods, and for also sharing. Let me pop it up one more time, too, so that people can see it. But sharing the ice right there. Go to takeactionreviselater.com/ice so that you can get access to this. And then also consider setting up some time with Bob so that you can really sit down and get prioritization in place, y'all, because it's a real thing these days with people who are creating anything, and especially for those of us who are creating content on the go. Is
Yeah.
there anything that you want to leave our audience with, Bob? Any last nuggets of wisdom?
Yeah, I think one of the things I love to share is there's a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson from way back in the 1800s that he said, "That which we persist in doing becomes easier, not because the nature of the task changes, but our power to do improves." So 18th century, lots of words, but basically keep at it. It gets easier, it gets better. Take action, revise later. Thanks for having me, Tanya.
I love it. Thank you, Bob. And we will definitely have to have you back at some point because I know people are going to learn so much from this. I'll go ahead and get us closed out. All right. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy all these wonderful tips that Bob shared, look, just in the short amount of time that we were together, he dropped some knowledge. So, make sure if you haven't taken notes that you go back and watch the replay and take notes, and then go to the website, takeactionreviselater.com/ice to check it out. I am grateful that we had a chance to be here with you this evening. And I hope that you will take action and make sure you go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow for this channel because we're going to continue to have amazing guests as well as, our video marketing strategies that we talk about every week on Thursdays. Make sure you follow us, and we will see you next week in the stream. Take care.